Number 5 on this list is the Devil's Pond. The Devil's Pond is a very beautiful and calm-looking body of water on the outside, but it's far more dangerous when you step inside. Located in the Queensland forest, the pond itself almost looks like something straight out of a fairy tale, but there's no happy ending here. 19 people have died in this tiny little pond. That's a staggering amount of people considering how small this one area is. In fact, so many people have had tragic endings here that there's literally a sign that says the creek has claimed many lives. Think about that. It sounds like something straight from a Scooby-Doo story. Beware of this pond or else, but like seriously, beware of the pond. An ancient Aboriginal legend tells us of how a runaway bride fell to her death here as she was escaping her wedding. The bride was named Ulana, and it's believed that she is actually the cause of the many deaths that have happened here. It's said that she lures and tricks people into coming towards her, and then they fall in and suffer the same fate that happened to her so many years ago. I'm not sure if the bride legend is true or not, but even if it isn't, this is clearly an incredibly dangerous spot in its own right. Australia is a big place, so don't feel like this is your only option if you're going for a swim when you're there. Number 4 on this list is the National Film and Sound Archive. Located in Canberra, which I actually just discovered is the capital city of Australia. Always thought it was Sydney, but actually it's Canberra, so that's fun. But anyways, the Film and Sound Archive is a staple of media culture in Australia. It just hasn't always been that way. Crypto-naturalist Tim says the NFSA building is regarded by many ghost hunters or paranormal aficionados as not only one of the most haunted in Canberra, but also one of the most haunted in Australia. It's not because it houses spooky movies though. The ghosts that are reported in the building stem from the period that it was the Institute of Anatomy. That's right guys, this building prior to being what it is now was housing and studying dead bodies for 50 whole years. There were countless scientific experiments that went on here on hundreds to potentially even thousands of corpses. During this time, it was a museum as well and showcased the dead bodies to those who visited here. Because of all this death, the place is pretty popular among the ghosts. Apparently, the dissection rooms are the most popular, with many paranormal sightings here over the years. There's also a little girl who many visitors have seen. She lives in the air vents of the building and pops out through the grates every now and again. Luckily enough, her intentions aren't evil though, and often tries to make people laugh. That being said, I still don't think that going to this place that used to house a bunch of dead bodies is the best idea. We have Netflix for a reason now guys, so let's use it. Number 3 on this list is the Beachworth Asylum. Ah yes, the classic haunted asylum. It feels like every country has one, but Australia's is particularly bad. The hospital opened in 1867 and was operational until 1995 when it was finally shut down. During that span when it was functioning, the asylum had over 3,000 patients die in its walls. That is an absurd number of people for a mental hospital. Part of this was because the methods that they used at this place weren't the best. Like most asylums that started in the 1800s, the treatments that they had for people dealing with mental health problems were far from ideal. Shock therapy, shackling patients up, just blatant torture were all things that went down at this asylum. Obviously, this didn't help anyone in dealing with their issues and caused a lot of people to pass away early. Now, these spirits of those who died here haunt the building. Screams can be heard ringing throughout the walls, with people thinking it's the ghosts of those who were being shocked or tortured. Some have reported seeing the ghosts of nurses walking around the building. These aren't your typical kind nurses though. People have said that they look evil and unforgiving. Deep feelings of depression can be felt here and just a strong feeling of uneasiness. Personally, I see absolutely no reason to visit this horrible place ever, and in all honesty, I'm kind of surprised that the building is still standing. Number 2 on this list is the Monte Cristo Homestead. Built over 150 years ago, this home has had such a tragic history that many believe it to be Australia's most haunted home, and honestly, after reading about the horrific things that happened here, I totally understand why. Australian Geographic writes, a chain of violent events in the house have triggered other supernatural incidents. A maid once plummeted to her death from the upstairs balcony, and the figure of a woman in period dress has been seen walking along the veranda to the blood-stained steps where she fell. A stable boy who burned to death in his bed at the hands of his master is thought to haunt the coach house, while the ghost of a mentally disabled man named Harold wanders the grounds. Kept chained in the caretaker's cottage for 40 years, Harold was found curled up at at the feet of his mother's dead body. He died shortly after being sent to a home for the insane. The sound of clanking chains is said to warn of his approach. All of those things are super scary to begin with, but the most cited ghost at this home isn't even mentioned there. Elizabeth Crawley inherited this house from her husband who passed in 1910, and her ghost has never left. After her husband died, she went into a deep depression and would rarely leave the home. She converted one of the upstairs rooms into a space to perform rituals. It's said that after her husband died, she only left this house twice and eventually died in it by herself. Now you'll know her ghost is present because there'll be a sudden and stark change in temperature whenever she nears. All of this lore has, of course, created a ton of interest around the home, and it's been featured on several Australian ghost television shows through the years. However, you can also stay at this home if you wanted for $200 a night and experience all of this ghostly stuff for yourself. Why you would want to pay $200 of your actual money to get haunted and potentially even cursed is beyond me, but hey, to each their own, I guess. And finally, number 1 on this list is Port Arthur. Port Arthur is located in the Australian state of Tasmania, which is actually an island state 240 kilometers off of the Australian mainland. Port Arthur initially served as a penal site by the British Empire several hundreds of years ago. Towards the end of the 1700s, Britain stopped sending their prisoners to the Americas and instead started shipping them to Australia. What's even better than going to the mainland, though, was this small island state that they also owned in the middle of nowhere. Countless prisoners over the following decades were shipped off to Tasmania, with Port Arthur being one of the biggest final destinations for these criminals. Once they got there, their lives were never the same. Many of these people that were shipped here had committed small crimes out of sheer necessity, stealing some food to survive or something to keep their families warm. The severity of the crime mattered little to the British authorities though, and even if it was something as small and insignificant as this, you could very easily find yourself stuck in this prison for the remainder of your life. The prisoners that got sent here were forced to work tirelessly in the timber, lumbering, and shipbuilding industries. Port Arthur actually boomed for the next 100 years, with more and more convicts being sent here. This was obviously very beneficial for the British government, but not so much so for the people who had to make this place their home. Many of them were mercilessly killed for no good reason. They were often tortured consistently if they weren't working hard enough or had done something that wasn't totally up to the standard. It really was a horrible way of life for those who got sent to Port Arthur. At around the end of the 1800s, Port Arthur started to slow down and eventually stopped altogether. The death at this location didn't end though, because in 1996, Port Arthur saw one of Australia's darkest moments ever. 35 people were gunned down in a mass shooting that took place at Port Arthur. All of this death from various generations has caused Port Arthur to be one of Australia's most haunted spots. In fact, over the years, there have been more than 2,000 incidents of unexplained paranormal activity. Things moving, voices shrieking, change in temperature, you name it, it's taken place at this location before. The asylum at Port Arthur is said to be the most haunted spot here, with reports of people getting scratched and touched by unseen entities. Port Arthur has had a horrible history to it, and it's not a place I'd recommend venturing out to if you do happen to catch yourself in the Australian state of Tasmania. Number 5 on this list is Sisu Hotel. Located in Bucharest, this hotel was initially built over 100 years ago in 1912 and was first called the Palace Hotel. It was called this because it truly was a marvel back then and was one of the most beautiful spots in the country. The architect who built it owned the property until 1948, when it was ultimately taken by the state. This is where it was given the name that it has today. For the next 20 years or so, the hotel thrived and wasn't only just a spot for the super wealthy to vacation, but was also a spot of parliamentary meetings and other things of great importance. In 1970 though, this hotel shut down. It was simply a side effect of the communist wave that was sweeping through this part of the world, and therefore the hotel was neglected for 20 years until finally it reopened in 1990. It wasn't used as a hotel anymore though, but rather as student housing for the students enrolled in the Academy of Film and Theatre. It was during this phase when Sisu Hotel saw the tragedy that haunts it to this day. Nellie Bajan was a young student who was staying here during her time in school. The semester had come to an end though, and it was Christmas time when the incident happened. She was one of the only students who didn't go home for Christmas and instead decided to stay in her dorm. One evening she was walking down the hall, and due to some of the lights being out, she stepped into the elevator shaft where there was no elevator waiting for her. She fell down several stories and landed at the bottom of the shaft, writhing in agony. She didn't die immediately though. In fact, it took her over 3 hours to finally die from her wounds. 3 hours where she was screaming and yelling for help, but nobody could hear her because they were all home for Christmas. Now her spirit haunts this place, and many students have reported hearing cries for help coming from nowhere. Some have seen her ghost standing at the end of the hallway, looking as if she's desperate for someone's attention. The sad thing about this is that if it would have happened at any other time when students were in the building, she likely would have been saved and never would have died at all. Just a horrible tragedy that's left its mark on this hotel for good. Number 4 on this list is the Witch's Pond. So this is a bit of a weird one. The Witch's Pond is a very small collection of water in the Bol du Cristaica forest that's said to be haunted. A few legends have come from this place. The first one, which I don't actually think is true, but I'm going to tell you guys anyways, is that Vlad the Impaler was decapitated here. Now it could be possible that this did happen. The truth behind Vlad's death has been debated for centuries, but I find it unlikely that the killers would take him out to this pond in this forest and do it out here. The second legend, which I think is far more likely and probably did actually happen, is that a witch was killed here. An article on the subject writes, as the legend goes, 18th century villagers put a witch to death in the woods near a swampy pond in colonial era cemetery of Aquia Creek. Her name, it said, was Edith, and her body was tossed into the water. This killing is how the pond got its name, the Witch's Pond. After she was killed, strange occurrences started happening here that couldn't be explained. It said that the water turns blood red in the springtime, and sometimes people see a witch-like figure hovering over this bloody liquid. In other reports, there's a sacrificial altar that's spawned here, and she's standing by it waiting to sacrifice someone. The sound of bodies being thrown into the pond along with a witch's cackle can be heard ringing throughout the forest. Locals avoid this pond, and you should too. Also, if you think about it, it's just a small pond, so I don't really know why you'd be going there anyways. Number 3 on this list is Ulia Hau Castle. Bogdan Hau was a Romanian intellectual who was very wealthy at the end of the 18th century. Bogdan, even though he put lots of effort into his work and business, put the most of his time into his daughter. Ulia Hau was his daughter, and in Bogdan's eyes could do no wrong. That's why when she passed very unexpectedly at the age of 19, Bogdan fell into a deep depression. While she was alive, she was rather remarkable. In her early teens, she knew 7 languages and had already graduated several prestigious schools for piano and vocals. She apparently excelled at her schooling as well and was set to have a very fruitful life if she hadn't been taken too early due to tuberculosis. Bogdan, as I mentioned, didn't respond super well to this and reacted by building the Ulia Hau Castle. Little did he know that it was going to be haunted. Apparently he partook in spiritism sessions with people who were trained in reaching out to the dead. In these sessions, he would communicate with his daughter's ghost, and she would tell him how she wanted her castle to be constructed. This is how it was built, and everything that he decided to do and tell the architect apparently came directly from the ghost of his daughter. Her ghost didn't just leave things be when this castle was finished though. In fact, she fully took up residence here. It's said that the ghost of this girl can be spotted walking throughout the halls of this castle very often. Many people report hearing the sound of a piano playing, assumingly at the hands of this ghost. What's even creepier though is that this piano playing will instantly be followed by the applause of her dead father. Also, this castle has several rooms specifically made for spiritual rituals and also an area to worship Satan. From what I've heard, the ghost here isn't particularly dangerous in nature, but it still sounds like one of the creepier spots in the whole country. Number 2 on this list is Poner Fortress. This fortress has been riddled with death and destruction ever since it was first built. Even though in the first part of this series we talked about Dracula's castle, this is the castle where Vlad the Impaler, the inspiration for Dracula's character, spent a large part of his time. It's said that he saw the ruins of a fortress here at the beginning of his rule and thought that it would be a great place for a stronghold. He enslaved his enemies and worked them around the clock to revive the fortress to its former glory. Many of them died due to the extensive labor and fatigue, and those who didn't were killed by being impaled. Now, it's said that some of their spirits haunt this place, but they aren't the only ghost that still lingers here. The most notable haunting of this place is actually done by Vlad the Impaler's wife. During Vlad's reign, this fortress fell under siege by his enemies. Vlad was able to escape the castle, but his wife wasn't so lucky. The castle was falling, and rather than get captured by the oncoming army, she decided to fling herself off of the castle walls over top of a cliff. Her body fell far and dropped into a river many hundreds of feet below. It's said that the river ran red with blood and it was nicknamed the Lady's River following this. Her ghost now forever wanders around this castle, restless. Some say that her soul can never find peace because she could never forgive her husband for abandoning her all those years ago. This is why locals say that she has it out for any married men that visit the castle. Although visiting this castle would definitely make for a fun day trip, it might just not be worth it. Number 1 on this list is Bachu Forest. Often referred to as the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania, this forest is on pretty much everyone's list when it comes to the most haunted forests in the world. It all started when in 1968 a military technician took a photo of the area and captured what looked to be a UFO hovering over top of the woods. An article from My Best Place writes, after this incident, other inexplicable events soon followed, including the disappearance of a shepherd and his 200 sheep which were never found again, and the disappearance of a 5-year-old girl who later reappeared 5 years later wearing the same clothes and without having aged even one day. There have also been many first-hand reports from people who have entered the forest only to come out with burns, severe rashes, headaches, and a high fever which they didn't have before. Some studies have revealed higher than usual radioactivity produced by natural uranium present in the subsoil. The part in that article about burns and rashes and other things is one of the most common reports described by the people who go here. It seems that everyone who enters into these woods leaves with some sort of trauma. Most of that trauma is mental though. Feelings of despair and depression are widely documented from pretty much everyone who steps foot into this forest. All of the numerous reports, the photographs, and the general lore around this place has to make it the most haunted spot in all of Romania. Definitely not a forest that I recommend going to if you're looking to get outdoors.
In at number 5 we have Lotus Hall. This place may be the most haunted house in all of Ireland, and it is said to be haunted by the devil himself. Lotus Hall is a large country house located on the Hook Peninsula in County Wexford. In 1170, Raymond le Gros came to the county and built this massive castle which was known as the Houseland Castle. The Redmond family replaced the original castle with another in about 1350. This second castle was known as the Hall, or Redmond Hall. Later in 1872, John Henry Wellington Graham Loftus undertook an extensive rebuilding of the entire mansion, adding many of the famous elements like the grand staircase, mosaic tiled floor, elaborate parquet flooring, and technical elements that hadn't been seen in houses in Ireland at the time, such as flushing toilets and blown air heating. Charles Tottenham became the lord of the manor in 1752 by marrying the Honourable Anne Loftus, daughter of the first Viscount Loftus, and they had 6 children. However, his wife became ill and died while the girls were still young. 2 years later, Tottenham married his cousin Jane Cliff, and they lived together, along with one of Charles's daughters in Loftus Hall. One evening, Charles was resting in his home in 1775 with his second wife and daughter from his first marriage, Anne, while the Loftus family were away on business. During a storm, a ship unexpectedly arrived at the Hook Peninsula, where the mansion was located. A young man was welcomed into the mansion. Anne and the young man became very close. One night, the family and the mysterious man were in the games room playing cards, and it was then when Anne noticed the man having a cloven foot. The man went up through the roof, ultimately leading to his demise and leaving behind a large hole in the ceiling which remains today. Soon Anne became mentally ill. It's believed that the family were ashamed of Anne and locked her away in her favourite room, which was known as the tapestry room. She refused food and drink and sat with her knees under her chin looking out the tapestry room window, waiting for her mysterious stranger to return until she passed away in the tapestry room in 1775. It is said that when she died they could not straighten her body as her muscles had seized, and she was buried in the same sitting position in which she had died. After her death, everyone who had lived there says she still haunts the hall to this day. After being purchased by Aidan Quigley in 2011, this building was marketed as a haunted house that hosted guided tours of the house until 2020 when it was put on the market for sale. In at number 4 we have the Abbey of the Black Hag. The old abbey lies on a small valley about 2 miles east of the village of Shannon Golden in the townland of the Old Abbey. One of the earliest nunneries in Ireland, it is first mentioned in 1298 and was founded on land donated by John Fitzthomas of Conello, who had died in 1261. Remains include the abbey church with 2 small spaces adjacent, and one appears to have been a sacristy and a vaulted building to the west. There are also walls and a gate and traces of an orchard, a fish pond, and a pigeon house. Modifications to the church in the 15th century saw the inclusion of an an east window in the church as well as a doorway in the north. Traces of window decoration, columns, and carved tombstones remain. Burials were also located and the church plate was reportedly found in the late 18th century. It is said that the last abbess terrified the local population with her use of the black arts and sexual practices in a room to the south of the church, and is now called the Black Hag cell. After the closure of the abbey, the hag remained there and continued to perform her unholy acts, and it's believed she lived unusually long, which caused her ancient skin to become darker and darker over time. Another legend is regarding the Earl of Desmond, and that during his escape from one of the many battles between the Geraldines and the Butlers, the Countess was wounded by an arrow. The wound was so serious that the Earl believed the Countess had died and buried her beneath the altar in the main chapel. The Countess awoke to find herself buried alive, and when people would see a ghostly figure, they went to her gravesite and they had found her finger bones had been worn out from clawing at the coffin, and it's believed her screams can still be heard to this day. In at number 3 we have Cork District Lunatic Asylum. The Cork District Lunatic Asylum opened in 1789, and by 1845 the Irish Lunatics Asylum Act allowed for appropriating the lunatic asylum in the city of Cork to the purposes of a district lunatic asylum. The legislation provided for 2 new asylums, a criminal one in Dundrum, Dublin, and then a 500-bed asylum in Cork. This building was originally in 3 separate blocks, later to be joined together in the interest of providing more accommodation. To become the longest facade of any building in the country, it opened in 1852. William Saunders Halloran was an Irish psychiatrist who worked at this asylum from the time it opened until his death, and was the author of practical observations on the causes and cure of insanity. This doctor's methods were extreme and torturous. He created something called the Halloran's chair, which rotated hysterical patients up to 100 revolutions per minute. It rarely had the desired effect. Inmates lived out their days in a state of paranoia and despair while admitted at the asylum. The horrors of this place finally ended when the asylum was closed in 1992. It stayed abandoned for many years, and locals and tourists went to visit this scary place. They claim the tortured souls still remain here, and paranormal investigators even visited and claimed to have seen both and heard voices of these tormented souls. Today the building is being converted and renovated into apartments called Atkins Hall. In at number 2 we have the Hellfire Club. The Hellfire Club is located on Mount Pellier Hill in Dublin. The building gets its name because it's believed to be one of the first Freemason lodges in Ireland. Around 1725, William Connolly, who was one of the wealthiest men in Ireland at the time, built this building to be a hunting lodge. Years after the build, the roof was blown off during a storm, and locals believed it was the work of an aggressive spirit seeking vengeance on Connolly for building on their land, and that's when the story started swirling. After Connolly's death, the building was quickly sold and is said to have become a meeting place for the Irish Hellfire Club. The club was founded in 1735 by Richard Parsons, a known dabbler in black magic. The members met at locations across Dublin and were known for their immoral behaviour and debauchery involving alcohol and sex. The secrecy surrounding the club members led to speculation that they were Satanists and devil worshippers. The president of the club was named the King of Hell and dressed like Satan with horns, wings and hooves. The members were said to set a place at each meeting for the devil in the hopes that he would attend. They were also said to hold black masses in the lodge, during which cats and even servants were sacrificed. Some say the building was deliberately set on fire in order to enhance its hellish atmosphere. The best known Hellfire Club story is the one in which the devil himself appears. A stranger had joined the members at a game of cards. At some point, one of the card players dropped a card on the floor. As he bent down to retrieve it, he noticed that the stranger had cloven hooves instead of feet. Another tale concerns a young farmer, curious to find out what went on in the meetings. Climbing up Mount Pellier Hill one night, he was invited by members of the club and allowed to witness the night's activities. He was found the next morning trembling and terrified. Tradition says he spent the rest of his life unable to speak, unable even to remember his name. The Hellfire Club remains burnt out and abandoned on Montpellier Hill looking over Dublin. It is a beautiful sight on a sunny day, but make sure you leave before night. It's a beautiful sight on a sunny day, but make sure you leave before night comes, because you may come into contact with the unusual smells, ghostly apparitions or paranormal sightings. And it's said that satanic rituals are known to be done here. And finally, in at number 1 we have Leap Castle. Of the many haunted places in Ireland, Leap Castle is possibly the most notorious of all, and is one of the most well-known symbols of haunted Ireland. This place is located in Coolderry in County Offaly. There are many accounts of when the main tower was constructed, but could go back as far as 1250 CE and was built by the O'Bannon clan. The O'Bannons were the secondary chieftains of the territory and were subject to the ruling O'Carroll's clan. There are many stories of who or what haunts this place. A red lady ghost ghost is reported to walk the halls holding a dagger, and also 2 little girls named Charlotte and Emily are reported to run up and down the spiral staircase in the mansion. A red lady ghost is reported to walk the halls holding a dagger, and also 2 girls named Charlotte and Emily are reported to run up and down the spiral staircase in the mansion. Emily passed away after she fell from the top of the castle's tower, and Charlotte can still be seen running around after her sister and calling her name. The castle was visited by paranormal investigators from shows like Most Haunted and Scariest Places on Earth. These investigators believe the castle is haunted by a sinister elemental spirit. The creature is described as being about the size of a sheep with a human face, black holes for eyes and nose, and giving off the smell of a rotting corpse. During renovation of the castle in the 1900s, workers found an oubliette behind a wall in the chapel. At the bottom of the shaft were many human skeletons on wooden spikes. When cleaned out, it took 3 cartloads to remove the bones. Today, the dungeon is now covered over in order to keep people away from it. It's believed that the O'Carrolls would drop guests through the trapdoor to be impaled on the spikes 8 feet below and could be haunted by the people killed by the O'Carrolls. The castle describes itself as the world's most haunted house, due to the numerous amounts of spirits located here. Coming in at number 5, we have South Manatee Island in Leland. South Manatee Island is part of an island chain in Lake Michigan that extends north to the Straits of Mackinac. The only public access is by ferry from Leland, Michigan. The island consists of a ridge of tilted layers of limestone buried under a blanket of glacial debris. 16 miles offshore from the Lilano Peninsula, featuring 300-foot sand dunes, deserted shoreline and empty campground, it's about as terrestrially creepy as you can get in Michigan. In the 1800s, the island became a popular harbour for ships traversing the newly built Erie Canal into the Great Lakes and on to Chicago. One local legend surrounds a ship full of passengers stricken with cholera stopped at South Manatee, where sailors buried their victims in a mass grave, some of them still alive at the time. Soon after this incident, the first appearance of ghosts and hauntings began. The mass grave is believed to be near the old cemetery just north of the Bay campground. This is also near where the old dock used to be located. Additionally, the passage between mainland Michigan and Manatee is one of the deadliest sections of Lake Michigan. This is due to a sudden weather change, creating a navigational hazard, causing over 50 known shipwrecks. Traffic was quite busy here during the late 1800s, and there were frequent accidents where ships would literally run into each other. Off the coast of the island lies the shipwreck of the SS Francisco Morazan, where rumors say a young island boy died after trying to explore on his own. There are also 2 cemeteries on the island and an ancient cedar forest where voices are said to be heard. The haunting of this island is so bad it has driven park rangers to go mad and demand to be taken off the island. One ranger even confessed to hearing voices, footsteps and slamming of doors inside buildings that were otherwise unoccupied. Coming in at number 4, we have Masonic Temple. With over 16 floors and 1,000 rooms, this Gothic temple is one of the most striking buildings in Detroit. Furthermore, this is the largest Masonic temple in the world. According to rumors, there are hidden passageways, rooms and staircases, so be careful as you might get lost quite quickly within the walls of this temple. The most famous urban myth associated with the temple is that of the architect George D. Mason. Legend has it that Mason went bankrupt funding the construction of the temple. He was going through financial difficulties and was very close to foreclosure. Due to this stress, George D. jumped to his death from the roof. This story will back up the fact that many reports of a ghost climbing the steps to the roof of the building as if stuck in a loop of his darkest moment. Even scarier, additionally, guards frequently find the door to the roof unlocked, even when it was just checked moments earlier. Additionally, the temple has various cold spots and doors are reported to close suddenly. One of the roof doors is said to swing open just moments after it is locked by a watchman. Many people report the feeling of being watched while inside of the building. Coming in at number 3, we have Doyle Hotel. The Doyle family has owned and operated the hotel since it opened in the 1920s. The Doyle men were and remain the business managers. However, as the current owner Jim Doherty tells it, it was the Doherty women who were the heart and soul of the business. The hotel has a colourful history. During Prohibition, it was a speakeasy, a place for backroom gambling and adult entertainment. It was also a meeting place for the Mafia and Purple Gang. Here, they worked out their differences. In 1938, the hotel was the site of one of the Michigan's most notorious murders. Isaiah Lebo, former Purple Gang attorney turned Purple Gang businessman, was murdered in the bar. He was shot by his cousin and and business partner Jack Livingston and sadly passed away. Ever since, there have been numerous hauntings. Some believe it's Liebe who haunts the ground, or grandmother Helen Doherty, who passed away at the hotel. But there is one thing for sure, and it's the many ghost stories that are now associated with the hotel. Guests, visitors, investigators, employees, and the owners have all had some kind of paranormal experience at the hotel, which includes perfume scent wafting through occasionally, loud knocking, bedroom doors open and close by themselves, and dark apparitions and shadowy figures have been spotted anywhere from the lobby to the top floor. Also, the spirits of other murder victims roam the halls, lobbies, and rooms. While some can be seen, others prefer to just make noise. Coming in at number 2, we have Michigan's first state prison. Established in 1838, Michigan's first state prison remained in operation through 1934. The prison served as the nucleus for the city, as it spanned some 20 acres. Over the years, it relocated and at one point became the largest walled prison in the world, with around 6,000 inmates. In 1952, in response to poor medical care, brutality from the guards, and bad food, 2 maximum security prisoners took hold of a guard and used his keys to release other inmates. A days-long riot ensued, resulting in 9 guards being held hostage. Additionally, the riot resulted in the deaths of several inmates and guards before it was extinguished by the National Guard. The inmates fought for and won a list of 11 demands for reform. Today, the old prison has become the Armory Arts Village, a residence and studio for local artisans. Apartments are very contemporary and halls are covered with artwork. In spite of its modern renovations and freshly painted walls, though, rumours persist of its haunting. Visitors, workers, and artists of the space claim some prisoners and guards still haunt their former home. Residual sounds of riots are also frequently reported due to the prison's history of such occurrences. Judy Krasnow, an employee at the renovated Arts Village, hosts daytime historic tours of the prison, so a visitor can see the hauntings for themselves. She is also a resident of the prison and lives on site. She has confessed she believes her apartment, which was once a series of prison cells, has ghosts. Furthermore, Judy is not the only resident who believes that. Even though the upper floors have undergone renovations, the underground section that holds solitary confinement remains structurally intact. Although cells have been removed, there is intensity in this area that cannot be denied. And finally, in at number 1, we have the Whitney Restaurant. Located on Woodward Avenue, Restaurant Whitney was the former mansion home of David Whitney. David was one of the Midwest's wealthiest lumber barons at the turn of the century, and he built this magnificent 21,000 square foot home in 1894. The mansion was restored in the mid-1980s, and since then, reports of unexplained paranormal activities have been reported, such as shadow figures have been seen on the second floor, disembodied voices have been heard, and other strange phenomena have occurred. It is known that the mansion is haunted by Whitney and his first wife Flora. Flora always wanted to live in a mansion but died before the home was finished, leaving Whitney to raise their 4 children. A year after Flora's death, Whitney married her sister Sarah, leaving Flora's ghost to forever live in distress. The paranormal activity within the restaurant is not for the faint-hearted, as there have been reports of the elevator travelling between floors on its own with no one inside to operate it. Furthermore, ghosts have been witnessed on the upper floors, with one staff member seeing an older man looking out the window. The staff member approached the man asking him to leave, and right before the staff's eyes, the man vanishes into the floor. Other reports include noises that sound like silverware and kitchenware being handled and or stacked, and table settings keep getting moved around by some unseen presence. The outhouse is said to be the most haunted part of the property. It was originally built for Whitney's slaves and has been largely untouched for years, mostly due to the fear of paranormal. Inside the outhouse is a dining table that is set for the afternoon tea and has been untouched for as long as anyone can remember. Today it is still perfectly set but covered in a thick layer of dust, adding to the ghostly atmosphere. The outhouse has no electricity, so sits in the darkness at night. A tour guide who once worked at the Whitney insisted that the building was haunted for his experiences working there. The worker claims a group of dolls vanished from a room inside the building. Also, the worker has reported hearing his name being called from an empty area of the building. The Whitney Mansion is an elegant and beautiful property but has high body counts, a haunting history, and plenty of supernatural sightings still happening today.
Number 5 on this list is Tranquil Sanatorium in British Columbia. Tranquil Sanatorium has quite an extensive and tragic history to it, which has caused its walls to be the home to many undead spirits. A sanatorium, if you weren't familiar, is an establishment which has the sole purpose of housing those with long-term illnesses and is often associated with tuberculosis. The one that we're talking about right now is no different. It was built in 1907 as a facility to treat people with tuberculosis. However, it didn't stay like this for very long. The purpose of the facility eventually changed to become an insane asylum. It acted as this mental institute for a while until finally becoming abandoned in the late 1980s. Due to its deep history with death, disease, mental illness, it's no wonder that the Tranquil Sanatorium is now deeply haunted. The layout of this facility screams something out of a Stephen King book. It has several buildings that are connected by poorly lit underground tunnels. The building itself looks all too eerie from the outside as well, with dirty cream colored walls that have seen far better days as rot and mold slowly devour them. Visitors of this place report feeling extremely uneasy. A common note for most people that visit is the presence of orbs, strange balls of light that flutter throughout the building and then disappear. Some people have reported seeing a ghostly apparition on the 6th floor. This ghost takes the form of a woman not older than 30. She appears to be crying and screaming. The tunnels are said to be particularly haunted. People have reported screams coming from nowhere, flashes of movement, menacing and animalistic groans that make you feel as if somebody is right behind you. Children can also be heard playing every now and again in some of the more open areas of the building. Clearly, this place's dark history has impacted it greatly, and just because physical humans decided to abandon it in the 80s doesn't mean that it was truly abandoned for good. Number 4 on this list is the Ferguson House. The Ferguson House is part of Fort Edmonton Park, which, you guessed it, is located in Edmonton, Alberta. Fort Edmonton Park is a little tourist attraction that has buildings from 1885, 1905, and 1920 to represent the homes of the time. One of the houses is the Ferguson House. This home is interesting because during my research, I couldn't find any particular evidence of wrongdoings or tragic events at this home. In fact, for the most part, it seems like a pretty normal house. People have lived there before and no harm has befell them, but it seems that after they moved out and the home was donated, that's when things started to go a little bit haywire. There are reportedly 3 ghosts or demons that haunt this home, each one scarier and more dangerous than the next. The first one is the ghost of a beautiful floating woman who is dressed in all white. People have said that they've spotted her in the windows of the home looking out at them or slowly drifting throughout the living room. The second one is the ghost of a little boy. The boy will appear to certain people looking extremely ill. It is currently unknown if this boy died in and around the area or what disease he is suffering from, but it is said that he resides in the home with the woman in white. The third being is by far the scariest of all 3. A ventriloquist dummy that will appear in the home or in the cupboards. This thing can move all by itself and talk by itself. It is very similar to the popular horror franchise Chucky, and it's said by some to be seeking to harm the living. I'm not sure if the ghost of the ventriloquist has taken over this dummy or if the dummy has taken on its own persona, but I definitely do not want to go anywhere where the primary residence is a demon puppet. Number 3 on this list is the Fisherman Restaurant. This is a restaurant in Halifax, Nova Scotia, known for its exceptional oysters and also its ghostly inhabitants. The ground that this restaurant sits on wasn't always utilized for serving up fish and chips though. In fact, it has a very long history. In the early 1800s is when the building went up, and for a long time it acted as the town's only school. Nothing ghoulish or demonic about that. However, at around the turn of the century, the school moved and the building took on a new purpose. It became the mortuary for Halifax and made its dealings with the dead. Now, not every mortuary is going to become haunted, but this one had quite a lot to deal with over the years. In 1912, the unsinkable ship, the Titanic, sunk. It sunk roughly 640 kilometers off of the eastern shores of Canada, and therefore the closest places to assist with the rescue was these eastern provinces. Halifax acted as the leader in these rescue processes, and because of that, the mortuary had an onslaught of bodies of people whom had died on the ship. 5 years after that tragedy, Halifax incurred one of their own with the massive Halifax explosion. This was where a munitions ship exploded and it killed roughly 2,000 people just like that. This mortuary served as the primary designation for both of these incidents, and due to the unnatural deaths here, it makes sense that some spirits have clung on. Guests and employees alike have reported seeing ghosts all over this mortuary that turned restaurant. One of the dishwashers reported running out of the restaurant when he looked up from what he was doing and was staring directly at a ghost-like specter. The restaurant has attempted to have serious renovations done. However, I don't think that any amount of structural changes witches will get these spirits to rest for good. Number 2 on this list is the Frank Slide. Now, even though the Frank Slide sounds like it could be a fun, popular dance move that takes over TikTok for a few weeks, it is far more morbid than that. On April 29th in 1903, in the mining town of Frank, which at that time was part of the Northwest Territories but is now a section of Alberta, there was a horrible tragedy. 110 million tons of limestone and rock came tumbling down in one of Canada's biggest landslides ever. This fell onto part of the town of Frank. Frank was located right next to Turtle Mountain, which after extensive mining had grown unstable. On April 29th, it all came crashing down and claimed the lives of 70 to 90 people. It is still to this day Canada's most deadly landslide to ever occur in history, and was a horrible tragedy that can only remind us how fleeting life can be. I think the craziest part about this landslide as well is that it wasn't just miners who were killed. Their wives, their families, all of them died at the hands of the Frank Slide. The remains of these bodies were never recovered either, as the damage from the slide was far too devastating. Where all of this happened is now a section of a town called Crow's Nest Pass, and over a century later, the ghosts of the dead still haunt the area. This place is somewhere where visitors have reported feeling very unsafe. They say that the overall feelings of uneasiness are almost too much to bear and that they have to leave. Cries, howls, screams, this can all be heard late at night as you're trying to sleep. Lanterns will be seen in the night walking around at the hands of unknown apparitions. It is basically a full ghost town of people who never deserved to die in the first place, all wanting to get a second just to feel their lives again as they were so unfairly ripped away from them. Definitely one of Canada's most horrific tragedies, and now home to one of its most haunted locations. Number 1 on this list is the Banff Springs Hotel. This hotel is located in Banff, Alberta, and is truly one of the creepiest places that I've ever read about. Now, first off, I want to note the hotel itself looks gorgeous on the outside. The beautiful nature it is surrounded by is stunning, and the hotel gives me some serious Harry Potter Hogwarts vibes. However, when I say that this place is surrounded by nature, I really mean it. It is totally out on its own, with no other buildings in sight at all. The secluded site has been around for 132 years and has housed its fair share of visitors. Some of these visitors have had some incredible stays. I mean, when you look it up online, the hotel has a 4.7 Google rating, so I mean, it's pretty freaking good. Some of the guests, though, they never checked out. In the 1920s, a couple was set to have their wedding at this hotel. On the day of the ceremony, though, the bride, while she was walking down one of the hotel's beautiful marble staircases, tripped and fell, smacking her head on her descent and dying on the spot. This bride's spirit is one of the most notable sightings people have had when they're staying at this hotel. It's said that they often see a phantom in a wedding dress ascending and descending the stairs very quickly. She's also been seen in the ballroom dancing alone, potentially dreaming of the dance that she wanted so desperately to have with the husband that she never got to marry. In 1975, a longtime bellman of the hotel, Sam, died there. Since then, sightings of Sam have been pretty consistent. One story details how 2 women lost their room key and called the front desk to go and get it. The front desk person sent someone to go and open their room for these ladies. When that person had got there, though, the ladies were already in the room and said that another bellman had let them in. They described Sam to a T when they spoke about the bellman who helped them out. Instances like this have occurred time and time again at the hotel, with many people believing his spirit is still working there. Finally, with this hotel, you have room 873. Room 873 is rumored to be the home of a gruesome murder. One evening, a family was staying there, and the father, for some unknown reason, lost his mind, murdering his family and himself. After completely refurbishing the room, the hotel put it back in service, but now people who have stayed there report hearing the screams and the cries as if they were still dying. If you have to stay at this hotel, definitely avoid room 873.
Coming in at 5, West Virginia Penitentiary. Opened all the way back in 1875, the West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville is said to be one of the most haunted prisons in the states. The first building constructed on the site was the North Wagon Gate, which was made with hand-cut sandstone. The state used prison labor during the process, and work continued on this first phase up until 1876. Following completion, the prison consisted of the North Wagon Gate, north and south cell blocks, a kitchen, dining area, hospital, and chapel, as well as a 4-story tower connecting the 2 administration buildings. The prison also also included space for female inmates and personal living quarters for the warden and his family. Once the prison opened, it housed 251 male inmates, including some who helped construct the prison where they were incarcerated. The condition of the prison worsened throughout the years, and the facility was eventually ranked as one of the top 10 most violent correctional facilities. On Wednesday, November 7, 1979, 15 prisoners escaped from the prison, one of them being Ronald Turney Williams, who was serving time for murdering Sergeant David Lilly of the Beckley Police Department. He managed to steal a guard's weapon and reach the streets, where he encountered 23-year-old off-duty state trooper Philip S. Kesner, who was driving past with his wife. Kesner attempted to take action against Williams, but he was shot in the process. The prison was home to riots, fires, and nearly 100 executions during its time in operation. To this day, visitors have reported sightings of phantom inmates and a shadow man wandering the premises, as well as unexplained voices and cold spots. You can take tours around this haunted penitentiary and even view the electric chair dubbed Old Sparky. For you brave souls out there, you can also do an overnight session if you dare. Coming in at 4, North Bend Rail Trail Tunnel number 19. North Bend Rail Trail is located in Ritchie County in West Virginia and is a favorite for hikers, cyclists, and horseback riders traversing the 72-mile-long trail. However, proceed with caution if you wind up in the area, particularly around tunnel number 19, also known as the Silver Run Tunnel. History goes that on one foggy evening in 1910, an engineer spied a young woman in a flowing white dress standing on the tracks. He brought the train to a stop, but when he searched for the woman, she had vanished. He wasn't the only one to spot her either, many of his predecessors had as well. No one quite knows the origin of the woman in white, although some bones were found under a house near the tunnel. Some people say you can still spot her. Now, those who explore the tunnel are advised to bring a flashlight even during the day, with the tunnel being over 1,376 feet long, which is beyond sunlight's reach. You have been warned. Coming in at 3, Droop Mountain Battlefield. On November 6, 1863, the Battle of Droop Mountain occurred in Pocahontas County, West Virginia during the American Civil War. Confederate forces engaged but failed to prevent Union forces under General W. Averill from a rendezvous with other Federal troops in a joint raid on Confederate railways. Droop Mountain was one of the largest engagements in West Virginia during the war and essentially resulted in the Confederate collapse. The battlefield site is now preserved and administered by West Virginia as a state park, and the unknown Confederate dead are buried in the Confederate Cemetery at Lewisburg. A wooden observation tower, hiking trails, and picnic tables mark the grounds where the Civil War soldiers fought, died, and some say still remain. Many visitors have reported sounds of galloping horses and sightings of the ghosts of headless Confederate soldiers, as well as one soldier lying asleep against a tree. Coming in at 2, Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. In the late 1700s, the Clay family moved to West Virginia, which is presently known as Mercer County. The Clay family, comprised of Mitchell and his wife, settled on an 800-acre farm and raised 14 children. However, in 1783, tragedy struck. While Mitchell was out hunting, a few members of the Shawnee tribe killed 2 of the Clay children and burned another at the stake. In retaliation, Mitchell hunted down a handful of Native Americans and killed them. The land in turn became unoccupied for years, up until the early 1900s when Conley T. Snyder purchased the land and built a small amusement park on it. However, the amusement park had just as unfortunate luck as the Clay family. The park featured a Ferris wheel and a swing ride and was popular among locals, particularly families of coal miners who resided in the area. In the early 1950s, a young girl on the swing ride was killed when a truck delivering sodas accidentally backed into the ride, striking her. Another child also drowned in the swimming pool, which was subsequently filled in to prevent further accidents. During its operation, at least 6 people died at the park, which resulted in the park ultimately closing in 1966. In 1985, Gaylord White, a former employee of the park, purchased the land with plans to reopen it. It happened for a brief period, that is, before the park closed again after a 1988 archaeological dig uncovered numerous Native American artifacts, as well as human remains on the property that had been buried prior to the arrival of the Anglo-European settlers. In total, 13 skeletons were uncovered, mostly of young children. Perhaps the property is cursed, or perhaps it's just a series of unfortunate events. Who knows? But one thing is for sure, it is one of the most most haunted places in the entire world. And finally, coming in at number 1, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, also known as the Western State Hospital, was a Kirkbride psychiatric hospital that operated from 1864 to 1994 by the government. Originally built by Richard Andrews, it was constructed from 1858 to 1881 and was originally designed to hold 250 people. However, it became overcrowded in the 1950s, with the hospital housing 2,400 patients, resulting in it being forcibly closed in 1994 due to changes in patient treatment. Following its closure, it was then purchased by Joe Jordan in 2007 and is open for tours and other events to raise money for its restorations. During tours of the facility, witnesses have reported doors slamming, shadowy figures, and even blood-curdling screams from within the building walls. The asylum has garnered such a spooky reputation. It has appeared on shows such as Ghost Stories, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and Paranormal Lockdown. It was also featured in Bethesda's 2018 video game Fallout 76 under the name Fort Defiance and acted as a base for the Brotherhood of Steel, one of the game's main factions. Coming in at number 5, we have Balgal Castle. The Balgal Castle is said to be one of the most haunted places in Ireland and is haunted by many different ghosts. The haunted castle is in the village of Ballygally in Northern Ireland and overlooks the sea at the head of Ballygally Bay. The castle was built in 1625 by James Shaw of Scotland, but now is run as a hotel. The most well-known ghost is that of Lady Isabella Shaw, or nicknamed the Ghost of Ballygally. Legend has it that her husband Lord James locked her away in a tower where she was supposedly pushed to her death. She is said to roam the halls of the castle looking for her child, who was taken away from her at birth from her cruel husband, Lord James. Many people who stay in the castle say that they are woken up throughout the night due to her knocking on their bedroom doors. The tourists often climb the spiral staircase to view the ghost room where Lady Isabella lived out her final days. In 2003, one of the managers of the hotel, Olga Henry, was once a skeptic of ghosts and paranormal activity. But after spending some time working at the hotel, she stated that she believes there is definitely something in the hotel. According to Olga, one guest was staying in one of the rooms in the tower beneath the popular ghost room, and in the middle of the night he had awoken suddenly, believing he was at home and one of his children had laid a hand on his back. He woke up and said that he could hear a child running around the room and laughing, but he couldn't see anyone around, so he ran out of the room and into the lobby. He was so terrified from what he had experienced and checked out right away and never returned to the hotel again. In December of 2003, Olga was setting up the dungeon room in the tower for guests arriving for a meal. She set up the tables neatly, then locked the room before leaving. Just before the guests were set to arrive, she went back into the room and the tables were now a mess with unfolded napkins and glasses with an unusual scum around them, and were now arranged in a circle on the table. Several paranormal investigators and mediums have come to the castle to investigate over the years. A group of mediums that spent the night at the hotel had reported that they had detected more ghosts than there were guests staying at the hotel at the time. In at number 4, we have Lunatic Castle. Lunatic Castle has an extremely sinister history and is haunted by a woman known as the Red Mary. This castle was originally a basic 5-story Irish tower house which was built around 1480 by a member of the O'Brien family, who were one of the last of the High Kings of Ireland and a direct descendant of Brian Boru. In 1639, Conor O'Brien married a woman named Mary Ní Mahone, and she became one of the most famous women in Irish folklore who, due to her flaming red hair, was commonly known as Red Mary. She was born in 1615 and she was married before Conor, but her previous husband died mysteriously and she gained control of his fortune. Due to the fortune, the newlyweds built a large mansion onto the tower house. In 1651, Conor O'Brien died in battle and the Red Mary married once again and again and again. It is believed that she had been married a total of 25 times. After the Red Mary died, the castle had various occupants in later years until it fell into ruins at the end of the 18th century and lays abandoned to this day. But it's often visited by ghost hunters and paranormal investigators. It's believed that the Red Mary haunts the castle after her death to this very day. Mary was said to have a foul temper, and if her servants were to displease her, they would be hung out of one of the castle windows, the men by their necks and the women by their hair, until they passed away. It's even said if the maids didn't learn to do whatever the Red Lady said, then she would injure them so heavily they would bleed. After her death, it's not known exactly where she is buried, but many think she is beside the castle, and locals and tourists claim to have seen an eerie womanly figure walking the halls of the castle, often looking out the windows, giving this castle the name of being one of the most haunted Irish castles. In at number 3, we have the Crum. Located in Northern Ireland, Crumlin Road, Gal, also often called the Crum, is reportedly one of the most haunted places in Belfast. This former prison was built in the Victorian era and was designed by Sir Charles Lanyon in in 1845. It is their only Victorian-era prison remaining in Northern Ireland and was one of the most advanced prisons of its day. This prison held some of the most dangerous and mentally ill people in all of Ireland, and many prisoners passed away while staying here, and they believed to haunt the building to this day. The prison had brutal conditions, and children were even held there as young as 6 for petty crimes like stealing food. This prison held executions, and the first known execution was done in 1854 to a man named Robert Henry O'Neill. It's believed over 20 people, including Robert, had been buried in unmarked graves within the grounds of Balgal. These executions were a public demonstration, were held in crowds of up to 20,000 people to watch. Later in 1901, there was an execution chamber built, and the most dangerous prisoners were sent to this notorious prison to be executed. After closing its doors in 1996, it is now used for events and conferences, and during the Halloween season, it's open to ghost hunting experiences and for paranormal investigators. This infamous prison is featured on the list of the world's most notorious historic prisons, and tourists continue to flock here due to the amount of paranormal activity and ghost sightings over the years. In at number 2 we have Malahide Castle. The Malahide Castle lies in the village of Malahide just north of Dublin and dates back to the 12th century. The estate began in 1185 when Richard Talbot was granted the lands of Malahide, and it was home to the Talbot family for 791 years until 1976. The castle was eventually inherited by the 7th Baron Talbot, and in 1973 it was passed down after his death to Rose, his sister. Then in 1976 the castle and its grounds were sold to the Irish state. Nowadays the castle is used as a concert venue, tourist attraction and banquet events. It also features a popular botanical garden, sports ground, golf course, tennis court and a children's playground. The castle's best known rooms are the Oak Room and the Great Hall, which display Talbot family history and are known to be visited often by paranormal investigators. The tragic story of a murdered jester named Puck is the most notable ghost who haunts the castle. Stories say he had fallen in love with one of the Malahide's prisoners, Lady Eleanor Fitzgerald. Puck was found out when he was stabbed in the heart, ultimately dying, but with his last breath he swore to haunt the castle for all of eternity. Locals and tourists see the ghost of Puck roaming the castle grounds. It's also believed that many members of the Talbot family also haunt the castle. When in the late 1700s, 14 members of the family sat down for breakfast in the Great Hall, and then later that night all 14 people were suspiciously found dead. It is rumoured to be one of the most haunted castles in Ireland. The castle's residents, workers and visitors have all reported similar eerie happenings, and you can learn about all of the different ghost hauntings on the very popular ghost tours, including Puck. And finally, in at number 1 we have Grace Neil's Bar. Not only are castles and buildings haunted in Ireland, but there is an Irish pub by the name of Grace Neil's Bar that is a popular haunted place. This Irish pub is located in County Down and was built in 1611 and is one of the oldest bars in Ireland. Originally this bar was called the King's Arms when it was first established, until it was taken over by Grace Neil. Grace spent years serving drinks to the bar goers. She was known to greet every guest with a kiss on the cheek and a hug, and she was described as having a strong spirit. It's believed by many that her ghost has stuck around the bar ever since her death in 1916. Cold spots are felt around this warm atmosphere, and some have reported seeing a ghostly figure of a Victorian-era woman wandering around the front bar. The current owners of the bar often hear sweeping noises, footsteps and glasses and cups have fallen suddenly off the shelves for seemingly no reason. Not only is Grace the only spirit haunting the bar, staff members of the bar have regularly seen shadowy figures of men passing by in the upstairs area. Several different ghost hunters have visited the 400-year-old pub in order to try and find answers for the unexplained sighting, including medium Derek Ackera and the most haunted team. One ghost hunter, Mike Hirons, believes he had come across an evil spirit when he was investigating the bar. He stated that the anomaly appeared before him as a ball of light upstairs and was very evil and unpleasant. Spirits sucked the energy from people, and he claimed to get very out of breath, and all his energy was drawn out when he was investigating the bar. Grace Neil's Bar is known to be among one of the most haunted bars in the world, and the most haunted in all of Ireland. Coming in at number 5 we have Terrace Inn. Located just north of the city of Petoskey lies the Victorian inn called Terrace Inn. The inn opened in 1911 and was known to be a luxury 38-room Victorian resort, though the perception of the Terrace Inn has since changed from a large number of scary ghost reports. It also doesn't help that there have been multiple deaths on the premise. Before this building was an inn, it was 2 boarding houses until they were torn down to create what we now know as Terrace Inn. During construction, 2 workers fell off off a beam and sadly passed away. Therefore, it's rumored that their spirits may have settled in at the inn once construction was complete. That's not the only accident and ghost story that has occurred at the Terrace Inn though, as many years later there was a woman named Abby Sweet who was staying at the inn. Abby was pregnant and unfortunately fell and lost her life. After that event occurred, her husband Edward passed away from heartbreak just a few years later. This accident occurred in room 211, which is known to have the most reports of ghost experiences and paranormal activity. That isn't the only spirit lurking in the inn though, as there is the interactive youth, a boy between the ages of 12 to 14 who has been seen inhabiting the basement. That being said, his identity and the reason for his presence are unknown. Over the decades there have been many reports of paranormal activity at the inn. If you ask the desk clerk for the inn's ghost files, they'll hand over a thick folder with accounts from past guests and employees. Even more frightening, it seems these reports may very well be true, as the reports span over 25 years written by strangers with similar ghost stories. Most reports from guests and workers are of hearing sounds of footsteps and voices late at night. Additionally, doors open and close by themselves unexplainably. Some have even reported hearing the sound of a piano playing or a party being held, but when investigated, the area the sounds were coming from was vacant. Plenty of paranormal investigators have spent the night at this haunted hotel, and they all agree it's crawling with paranormal activity. Lucky for the guests though, the investigators and workers all agree that the spirits aren't harmful or hold negative energy. That all being said, this historic inn remains one of our most paranormally active locations in Michigan. In at number 4 we have Sol Choy Point Lighthouse. On the shores of Lake Michigan sits Sol Choy Point Lighthouse. The lighthouse has been in operation since 1895 and it's the only active light left on the lake, but behind its walls holds the stories and spirits. Between 1902 and 1910, Joseph Willie Townsend was the lighthouse keeper who lived in the upstairs bedroom with his wife. For decades it's been said that Captain Willie Townsend remains attached to the old structure. The captain died at the age of 63 in 1910 and his death remains a mystery, though some believed it was cancer as he was known to be a heavy smoker. His body was embalmed in the basement of the lighthouse. Once Mr. Townsend died, some curious individuals got inside and went into the basement, where they found pieces of an old broken up kitchen table. Once they reassembled the table, that's when the paranormal activity began. The table chairs kept getting rearranged on their own and silverware was set on the table in a specific pattern, the way the captain preferred them. There have been multiple reports of a strong smell of cigar smoke within the lighthouse. Additionally, the captain's face has been seen in the upstairs bedroom mirror on 13 different occasions. The Sol Choy Point Lighthouse is one of the Upper Peninsula Paranormal Research Society's favourite spots to investigate due to its high activity from the paranormal. They have seen the alleged shadow of Townsend move behind the curtains of the lighthouse and have also seen him appear in a mirror. Not only that, but one guest had even said that during her visit she saw a man wearing a heavy blue coat walking across the yard of the lighthouse. She waved at the man, but he just ignored her. Not thinking much of it, she went on with her day. When the guest got home and did research on the lighthouse, she realised the man she saw was the captain himself. And to this day, those who visit Sol Choy Point Lighthouse leave with stories that turn non-believers into believers of the paranormal. In at number 3 we have Mackinac Island. One of Michigan's most popular tourist destinations is also one of its most haunted, Mackinac Island. The small island sits on Lake Huron, covering almost 4 square miles of land between the upper and lower peninsulas of Michigan. The island was originally home to indigenous settlements long before European colonization. Seeing at least 2 battles during the War of 1812, it has been the resting ground of many tragic deaths, making it a prime location for hauntings and paranormal activity. In a part of the island you will find the Grand Hotel. The area first served as a missionary school, but today it's known as a luxury hotel. Through investigators, there have been many reports of paranormal activity in the area, and it's known that the Grand Hotel is one of the hotspots for paranormal activity on the island. Legend has it that construction workers uncovered human remains while digging the hotel's foundation, with paranormal activity stories being recorded in the theatre, outside grounds, and in its its rooms. The staff have also reported seeing a man in a top hat playing the bar's piano. Others see a woman in Victorian clothing who roams the halls, even getting into beds. Another paranormal hotspot is the Mission Point Resort, which was a moral realignment, a religious movement from the 1930s. The resort's popular ghost story is about a man named Harvey who died in the late 1960s. Supposedly, Harvey was dealing with a broken heart and ended his life behind the resort, not being found until 6 months later. Some people believe there's more to the story, that he was perhaps murdered. That being said, Harvey is often reported in the resort's theatre, where visitors have reported being pinched or poked. With the never-ending ghost stories and paranormal reports, the island is deemed the most haunted town per capita in the United States, with 16 haunted locations per 478 people. It is safe to say that there are some paranormal activities and ghosts lurking on the grounds of the island. Coming in at number 2, we have Holly Hotel. Due to the growing number of railroad passengers passing through the area, the hotel was built in 1891. Many staff, residents, and haunted historians will agree that the Holly Hotel is one of the most haunted buildings in the state of Michigan. Norman Gauthier, a professor of parapsychology who is also known as a world-famous ghost hunter, investigated the hotel in 1989 and concluded that the building is indeed haunted by a great number of spirits. Throughout the years, the hotel survived 2 fires exactly 65 years apart. Many residents and guests of the hotel have talked about the weird feelings they got on the second floor of the hotel without us actually admitting to seeing ghosts. The inn's most famous ghost is said to be the former owner himself, Mr. Hurst. Hurst passed away in the 1920s, but many believe he just can't let go of his hotel. He is the most active ghost at the Holly Hotel and wasn't happy with the renovations that have been done to his inn. The rumour is if you see a man wearing a frock coat and top hat and smell cigars, you most likely have met the man himself. The other most common spirit would be with the former hostess, Nora Kane. According to the hotel, Nora's ghost is seen most often in the bar and back hallway. She has been heard playing the piano or softly singing a tune throughout the hotel, and her flowery perfumes can be faintly smelt when she is around. Those are only the 2 most common spirits of the Holly Hotel, though there are so many more encounters reported by visitors and ghost hunters. And finally, in at number 1, we have Beeson Mansion. Found in Niles, Michigan, sits an old mansion that was built in 1847. The home was constructed by a local whiskey distiller who sold it to an attorney, Strother Beeson, and that's why it was referred to as the Beeson Mansion. Across the street of the mansion lies the family's private cemetery. Strother built the tomb across the street as a final resting place for his mother, and it wasn't too long afterward another family member joined the cemetery. Strother's son, born in 1969, tragically passed away, and a total of 12 family members are now entombed in the crypt. The ghost stories surrounding the Beeson Mausoleum are at least based on truth, if not completely true. Family legends about Harriet's odd behaviour were cited in newspapers over time, but not until much later, accompanied by reporting on unverifiable hauntings. Jumping to the late 1980s, when working to restore the mansion, the property owner reported hitting their head on a table in the hall, but something hitting them on the back. As well, they experienced instances of being pushed forward by an unknown force. Additionally, the doors would open and close behind them unexplainably. The renovated mansion is vacant now, but no one dares to buy it due to the many cases of hauntings and paranormal activity.
Number 5 on this list is the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Operating from 1864 to 1994, this asylum, like most of the entries on this list, has certainly been through the ringer. This place was meant to only house 250 people at its max, but on many occasions had over 2,400 people residing here. Everyone was crammed in like animals, and considering this building was never meant to see this many patients at once, the living conditions were pretty horrible. Whenever you cram that many people into a small space together, especially an asylum, some pretty nasty things will go down as well. Several murders have taken place here over the years, along with incidents of patients and workers taking their own life. The haunting of this location was pretty progressive and didn't come on all at once. Reports date back to the early 1900s and got increasingly more frequent as time went on. Eventually it became clear by the later 1900s that this was no longer a usable space and they needed to move on. This is why it shut down in 1994 and has no medical purpose at this point. In fact, now the only thing that it has is ghost tours. dangerous. The owner of this place know the legends are far stretching with this asylum and intend to make a profit on it. The ghosts are decently friendly here, or at least for the most part aren't dangerous. However, there have been a few instances where individuals have been scared to a point of serious and significant trauma. If you do plan to go here, then make sure you have a thick skin and aren't frightened easily. Number 4 on this list is Haunted Harper's Ferry. Harper's Ferry is a small town in West Virginia that honestly looks like something out of a storybook. It's comprised of roughly 100 19th century restored buildings. As you can imagine, it's a very quiet town and there isn't too much of a big city vibe going on here at all. This place wasn't always quiet though. In the American Civil War, this town played a pivotal role and was fought over multiple times throughout the years. People believe that it was through the death during the Civil War that this place has developed an affinity to spirits. Deborah Block says, at the nearby True Treats historic candy store, chocolate and other candies are brightly lit on tables and in baskets. The cute and welcoming shop is popular with visitors, hardly seeming like a place where a ghost would want to hang out. But store manager Tara Dockman, known as the Ghost Lady, in town for her sensitivity to paranormal activity, says there are 2 ghosts who frequent the store, and she even knows one of them by name. The female has a white flowy gown and she goes to the top floor of the store where there are no customers, she explained. And Colby, a man, likes to show himself and usually shows a shoulder or a pants leg which you'll see walk across a room. They both like to throw candy around and slam doors on customers. Dockman said Colby is a troublemaker who may also push people. She assured me that she had spoken to him about not bothering me while I was in the shop and was hiding in a corner storage area. Tara isn't some nutbag who's the only one who sees ghosts here either. Tons of people in the town have had run-ins with them. In fact, the biggest attraction this town has to offer are the ghost tours that highlight how haunted this place truly is. Number 3 on this list is Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. The park is no longer functional, and based on all of the incidents that went down here, that's probably a good thing. It all started in the 1700s when a settler, Mitchell Clay, and the local Shawnee Native Americans fought and ended with 3 of Clay's children dying and lots of Shawnee warriors passing away as well. This was the inciting incident of the tragic movie that is Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Also, 200 years later, in the 1920s, this land was bought and turned into an amusement park. The buyer wasn't aware of this history though and didn't realize the dark mark that had been left here by that battle so many years ago. There were a decent amount of tragic incidents that went down here while the amusement park was operational, but there are 2 that stand out as being the most stunning. The first one involved a young girl on the swings. While she was on the swings, a delivery truck, without seeing her, backed straight into her and she passed away. The second one involved someone who drowned in the swimming pool because their arm got stuck in the drain. The amusement park had seen enough and shut down in 1966. It was roughly 20 years later that they discovered the history of this place and pieced it all together, assuming that a curse must have been responsible. Locals don't dare go to this place anymore for fear of this curse. It should also be noted that the few who have stepped foot on this place again have reported run-ins with that young girl who died so many years ago. It seems that this curse won't allow her spirit to pass on, and now she wanders the area. I'm sure that there are a bunch of other amusement parks in West Virginia that are a lot more fitting and functional than this one. Highly recommend avoiding Lake Shawnee altogether. Number 2 on this list is West Virginia Penitentiary. Would this really be a most haunted place list if we didn't throw a prison on here? Paranormal activity usually favors places that have seen a lot of tragedies and sadness, and this penitentiary has definitely had its fair share. This prison opened up in the 1860s and was active for 119 years before finally being shut down. In that time, it saw over 100 executions, countless riots where people were either severely injured or died, fires, and an insane amount of human rights violations. All of this has led to what we have now, which is just a really haunted prison. Though the prisoners are gone, they're not forgotten, and by many accounts, the ghosts of some of the 998 men who died here still roam free. There's a shadow man that has been seen and even photographed. Staff of the prison have been accosted by unseen forces. Strange noises still echo throughout the cell blocks, and something dark lurks in the bowels of of the building. That was a small passage from Moundsville Haunted History who are familiar with the prison. 998 men though. That's how many different individuals are thought to potentially haunt this place. That's literally a full-on ghost army right there, guys. This place must have been horrible if that many people's souls are left wandering around this space. If I was the owner of this spot, I'd do those 998 people a favor and just knock this place to the ground. Maybe then these ghosts can finally rest. And finally, number 1 on this list is Point Pleasant. This has got to be the top spot on our list just considering the amount of lore surrounding the creature here. The Mothman. If you're watching videos on this channel, then I imagine you're already probably familiar with what this creature is, but for those who aren't, the Mothman is a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area from November 15th, 1966 to December 15th, 1967. Shayla Klein says, according to legend, Mothman is a black 10-foot creature with wings and red eyes. Articles and newspapers at the time were reporting that the monster was also commonly seen in the TNT area near town, with some locals speculating that perhaps people were really seeing cranes or owls, and others wondering if the creature was created in some sort of mutation accident involving the chemicals associated with storing TNT. Regardless, legend has it that mysterious men in black suits began visiting the town shortly after the sighting reports. The most infamous sighting of Mothman was on December 15th, 1967. Locals said that they saw Mothman on top of or flying over the Silver Bridge, which was a suspension bridge over the Ohio River that connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to Gallipolis, Ohio. According to Mothman lore, shortly after the creature was spotted on the bridge collapsed, resulting in the deaths of 46 people. An investigation into the disaster found that a fracture in a suspension chain was the cause. This is one of the most famous American urban legends ever. The amount of people who saw this creature during this period of time and the fact that high-ranking secret officials started to investigate it all point to its legitimacy. It was active for about a year and then just totally disappeared though, and nobody knows what happened to it. The leading theory is that the government was able to capture whatever it was and probably took it to a secret base to study it. If that's the case, then Point Pleasant is most likely safe now, but be wary of what's flying over top of you if you do decide to go here.
Coming in at number 5, we have Hotel Park Central. Located on Central Avenue in Albuquerque, you'll find Hotel Park Central. The original building was constructed in 1924 and served as a hospital. It was then purchased in the 1980s and transformed into a mental health hospital. However, in 2010, a major renovation occurred with a $21 million investment, and it became the luxury hotel that we know today. The hauntings in this building date back to the time it served as a hospital. Patients would report seeing apparitions, hearing voices, seeing objects move, and feeling the presence of other beings when nobody was there. As well, when it was a mental hospital, it was known by patients and workers that on the top floor on the right wing, there is a ghost of a woman that likes to watch people in the hallways. Patients also reported having their bedsheets pulled off them in the middle of the night. Patients were not the only ones to experience things that couldn't be explained though. Staff of the hospital did too. They would often have the sensation of being watched, as well as hearing something whisper in their ear, the movement of objects, and a general sense of heaviness throughout the buildings. Today, many guests at the hotel report similar paranormal experiences, as many guests report feeling watched and the presence of unseen beings. They have also reported hearing voices and shuffling in the stairwells. Several guests have also seen a female apparition on the 3rd floor wing. A group of paranormal investigators were brought onto the scene of the hotel. The investigators were 3 team members who all experienced unexplained voices and whispering while close to the hotel. They also reported distinct coolness near their bodies and a sense of being watched. After reviewing their evidence, some of these experiences were captured on digital voice recorders. They also carried out the flashlight technique, an attempt at communication with the spirit that involves the answering of questions through the turning on and off of the flashlight. This was a success, with several responses captured on video. In at number 4, we have the St. James Hotel. Built in 1972 by by Henry Lambert, the St. James Hotel was established. Found in Cimarron, New Mexico, the hotel is known to be one of the most haunted places in America. The St. James Hotel is said to remain host to several restless spirits. Both the owners and the hotel guests will tell you that many unexplained events haunt it. Several psychics have visited the hotel and specifically identified 3 spirits and many others who passed through to relive their experiences. The hotel's second floor is the most active, with stories of cold spots and the smell of cigar smoke lingering in the halls. A prior manager commented about the spirits that linger in the hotel and said, "You never see them, but you do feel and hear them." Another report from a former owner states that she walked into the dining room and saw a pleasant-looking cowboy standing behind her in the mirror on the front of the bar. The spiritual activity of the hotel has been featured on the popular television show Unsolved Mysteries and A Current Affair. Room 18 at the hotel is kept locked because it houses the ghost of an ill-tempered Thomas James Wright, who lost his life at his door just after winning the rights to the hotel in a poker game. Having been injured from behind, Wright continued into the room and slowly met the end of his life. Because of the tragic accident that happened in room 18, it is known as one of the scariest and most haunted rooms. This can be seen with one former owner who said she was pushed down while in the room, and on another occasion saw a ball of angry orange light floating in the upper corner. The staff considers the room to be the most haunted, and people are rarely allowed to enter this room, much less sleep in it. Rumours abound that when the room was rented, several mysterious deaths occurred there. Other unknown entities are also said to roam the hotel, creating a host of paranormal activities. Staff report that items constantly fall off walls and shelves, and electrical equipment at the front desk behaves unpredictably. Others have reported cold spots throughout the historic inn, lights that seemingly turn on by themselves, feelings of being watched by unseen eyes, and cameras that cease to work inside the hotel, strangely returning to normal after leaving St. James. In at number 3 we have Kaimo Theatre. Built in 1927, this grand palace of a theatre certainly is a masterpiece of Pablo Deco fused with Art Deco. The creation of this beautiful southwestern style theatre was financed by a hard-working wealthy entrepreneur, Oreste Bacecchi, who wanted to fulfill a lifelong dream of building a grand theatre which would rival other larger-than-life movie palaces that were springing up around the United States. A large fire in 1963 destroyed Kaimo Theatre's iconic stage and much of the building, prompting the Bacecchi family to demolish it. In 1977, the same year, the theatre was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The citizens of Albuquerque voted to purchase Kaimo Theatre at a steep discount. In return, the city of Albuquerque offered to fund the restoration of the landmark attraction. With the change of hands, local restoration experts were hired to restore Kaimo Theatre to its former glory. The hauntings of Kaimo Theatre can be traced back to a freak accident that happened in the late afternoon on August 2nd, 1951. Back then, hundreds of moviegoers were in Kaimo Theatre to catch the latest films. Without warning, a water heater located in the theatre's lobby exploded, sending scalding hot steam and plaster into the air. A total of 8 people were injured in the accident, including one person losing their life, Bobby Darnell. Since then, the theatre is said to be haunted by the ghost of Bobby. Performers and staff of Kaimo Theatre have all reported strange and unexplainable activities happening in the theatre. In particular, donuts placed backstage for performers would often go missing. To appease the spirit of Bobby, an altar was erected beneath the stairs to the dressing rooms. Toys, sweets and donuts would be placed before every major performance to ensure the success of each show. Those who didn't would face a disastrous performance. Kaimo Theatre's technical manager Dennis Potter recounted an incident in December 1986 when the donuts were removed by Andrew Shear, director of A Christmas Carol, just minutes before the first show. It did not take long before the disaster occurred. Electrical cables fell, lights exploded, doors on the set opened without warning, and performers had forgotten their lines. After the end of the disastrous show, the donuts were promptly replaced and the next show went off without a hiccup. However, an interview with Andrew contradicted the Potter's story, with the former claiming that the donuts were never removed or replaced. Apart from the unexplainable disruptions, staff working at Kaimo Theatre have also reported seeing the ghost of Bobby, dressed in a striped shirt and blue pants. The ghost of Bobby is often seen loitering on the lobby staircase, looking for the next victim of his harmless shenanigans. In at number 2 we have La Fonda Hotel. Standing in Santa Fe, New Mexico, there is the historic La Fonda Hotel. Over the years, the hotel was destroyed and rebuilt several times over. In 1821, when Captain William Becknell blazed the path of what would become known as the Santa Fe Trail, he stayed at a La Fonda where the trail terminated at the town central plaza. As more and more pioneers traveled the Santa Fe Trail, the La Fonda became a popular destination for trappers, traders, mountain men, soldiers, politicians, and the like. The current La Fonda was built in 1922 on the site of the previous Terrace Inns. In 1925, it was acquired by the Atchison, Topeka Santa Fe Railroad, which leased it to Fred Harvey. For more than 40 years, from 1926 to 1968, La Fonda was one of the famous Harvey houses, a renowned chain of fine hotels. Today, the La Fonda Hotel is said to host not only travelers visiting Santa Fe, but also several ghosts. Some people believe that the Honorable Judge Slough continues to walk its hallways. However, more often reported is the ghost of the distraught salesman who jumped into the well after losing all of his company's money. The hotel's dining room, called the La Plazuela, is situated directly over the old well, and both guests and staff alike have reported the sight of a ghostly figure that walks to the center of the room, then seemingly jumps into the floor and disappears. Other reported phenomena include a ghost that haunts the Santa Fe room, as well as a spirit that walks the hallways near the La Terraza, a restaurant located on the east side of the hotel's third floor. In the 1970s, a ghost reportedly called the front desk to complain that someone was walking up and down the hallway in front of his room. When an employee was sent to investigate, he saw a tall man in a long black coat disappear into a stairwell. However, when he followed him to the stairs, there was no sign of the mysterious visitor. And finally, in at number 1, we have the Luna Mansion. The Luna Mansion in Los Lunas, New Mexico is known for one thing, and it's its ghost stories. Over the years, the Luna Mansion in Los Lunas has gained a reputation as being haunted. Guests and staff alike have shared stories of unexplained activity, which some chalk up to the paranormal. Over the years, the mansion changed hands several times before it was purchased and renovated as a fine dining establishment in the 1970s. It was then that the ghost of Josephina began to appear. Perhaps she didn't like the renovations, or maybe she just wants to stick around to make sure they were doing a good job on the home that she had spent so many years looking after. Dressed in 1920s period clothing, she had been described by employees as appearing very real. Most often she is seen in 2 former bedrooms on the second floor, an attic, storeroom, and at the top of the stairs leading to the second floor bar. At the top of the stairs sits an old rocking chair, which she has often been seen sitting in and rocking slowly. On one occasion, when an employee approached the ghost, she simply stood up and then slowly vanished. More often she is seen walking up and down the stairs, a habit that has been so commonplace that employees barely notice anymore. Where there's one spirit, others seem to follow, and more ghostly apparitions have been seen at the mansion. One of these is a former servant named Cruz, who was thought to have been a groundskeeper. Most often seen on the main level, he is said to be particularly friendly to women and children and likes to play practical jokes on the employees and patrons. On one occasion, he was seen sitting on a sofa as if waiting to be served. Dressed in vintage attire, the man was relaxing patiently when a waitress asked another staff member why he hadn't been served. However, the response was, "What man?" And when the waitress looked back to the sofa, the vintage spirit faded away. In at number 5, we have Ross Castle. The Ross Castle is one of the most haunted places in all of Ireland. It's located on the edge of Loughliney and Killarney National Park in County Kerry. It was built in the late 15th century by the local ruling clan, the O'Donohues, then changed ownership to the McCarthys in 1580, and finally it was leased out to Sir Valentine Brown. But then in 1688 they were exiled after the Glorious Revolution. The castle then became a military barracks, which remained so until the early 19th century. The Browns never came back, but did build the Kenmare House near Killarney. Legend has it that Mr. O'Donoghue jumped or was sucked out of the window of the grand chamber at the top of the castle and disappeared into the waters of the lake along with his horse, his table, and his library. It's believed that Mr. O'Donoghue now lives in a great palace at the bottom of the lake, where he keeps a close eye on his home and haunts many of the newcomers and tourists that visit the castle to this day. Another story is that in 1536, one of the owners of the castle was Richard Nugent, who was nicknamed the Black Baron, and he had a daughter named Sabina. When Sabina was on a walk along the water by her home, she encountered a man named Orwin, who was the son of an O'Reilly chieftain, who was the sworn enemy of the Black Baron. They chatted for a while and they swore to meet again. Over time they met every day in secrecy and soon fell in love, but they knew they could never be together because of the feud between their families. Sounds like Romeo and Juliet. With no hope for them in sight, they just decided to elope. One night they met again, decided to flee together, and they boarded a boat and started travelling down the lake when a storm came out of nowhere. The waves became too much for them and the boat flipped. Orwin unfortunately drowned because of this. Sabina did survive, but knowing her lover was gone, she locked herself up in the castle's tower, didn't eat or drink until she fell into a deep sleep to never wake up again and finally be with Orwin again. Sabina eventually did pass away because of this, and to this day she continues to haunt the castle. Visitors and guests make frequent encounters with her spirit, saying she is still searching for her lover so they can reunite again. And the Black Baron's presence has also been reported by visitors in and around the castle on numerous occasions. Many tourists have frequently reported waking up numerous times throughout the night, hearing sounds sounds of doors shutting on their own and whispering noises. A few others have also said they feel an eerie presence sitting next to them while in bed. Coming in at number 4 we have Castle Leslie. Castle Leslie is a massive castle that was home to the Leslie clan, and the Castle Leslies lay on a private 1,000-acre country estate located in County Monaghan. The Leslie family has lived in the estate since 1665, when the land was purchased and given to John Leslie by King Charles II. So he moved in, and he lived in the castle with his wife, Anita, and family. Many tourists and guests have recalled seeing many unexplained things throughout the castle, but the Red Room in particular was the most haunted of the entire castle. It was the centre of the family life at the castle for centuries, especially because it was where Anita Leslie King gave birth to her daughter Leonie in this room. Many of the family throughout living in this castle claim to see people, hear things and feel ghostly presence in the room. Due to so many people going in and out of the Red Room, it makes sense that it's the most haunted of all rooms in the castle. It's believed that Anita had died in the room, and you can apparently see her and John both walking around the estate trying to find each other and be together again. The castle is now used as a hotel room, and each room is named after members of the Leslie family. So if you ever want to come in contact with members of the late Leslie family, many of their ghosts are seen in their specific rooms, and you can book your stay in any room in the castle, even the Red Room. Not only is it a very popular tourist spot and a hotspot for paranormal investigators, but in 2002 it gained media attention when Sir Paul McCartney married Heather Mills in the church, which is located on the estate. Also, various members of the Churchill family have visited the castle due to family ties they have with the Leslies. In at number 3 we have Clifton Castle. Clifton Castle is located in County Galway and was built in 1818 for John Darcy, who was a local landowner and the owner of the town of Clifton. He had a castle built for him and his large family while he was busy building up the town, and it's where they all stayed for the next 2 decades. In 1839 John died and his oldest son Hyacinth inherited the estate, but everything went downhill in 1845 when famine hit. As hunger struck, the tenants of the Darcy estate gathered on the lawn of the castle to beg and plea for work or food. However, they couldn't get anything, and many of them died of starvation on the castle grounds. After the family's death, many peasants moved to the remains of the castle for shelter, but many of the poor died here. It's believed that the family's spirits can still be seen and heard on the property, and many of the peasants' ghosts are located in around the property as well. The castle has remained abandoned since around 1894, but remains a hotspot for tourists and paranormal investigators. Many believe to have seen ghost-like figures and hearing weird noises when they have been inside the castle. It's believed you can still see John Darcy roaming in and around the castle looking for food for himself and his family. The castle is also a popular attraction during the Halloween season because of the ghost sightings and paranormal activity. If you're brave enough to visit, you can do so and be joined by a tour guide to tell you everything about the castle, ghost sightings and history of the Clifton Castle. In at number 2 we have Balgal Castle. The Balgal Castle is located in the county Cork, which is next to the small village of Balvelly. It was initially built by the Anglo-Norman Hodnet family, who were an ambitious family who arrived in Ireland during the 12th century. The Hodnet and DeBarry families were in conflict at the time, and it resulted in the DeBarrys and their allies, the Roaches, capturing the castle for themselves and renaming it Barrymore. Then later on, Sir Walter Raleigh gained ownership of the castle. During the 1800s, the castle fell into ruins after many years of being abandoned. It's believed that a faceless woman haunts the castle to this day, and it's Anglo-Norman Hodnet's wife, Margaret. The story says that she had an on and off relationship with a local lord named Clon Rockenby, who had asked for her hand in marriage on many occasions, but she refused. Clon was humiliated and decided to raise a small army to go to the castle and take Margaret by force. The Hodnets fought back against Clon and his men, and a standoff began for an entire year. When Clon finally was able to enter the castle, he was shocked to see the state of Margaret. She was starved and looked like a skeleton, basically, a shadow of her former self. Clon was enraged and smashed her favourite mirror to pieces. Margaret was known for her love of mirrors to remind her of her renowned beauty, and at the time mirrors were a status symbol with the wealthy. After seeing the mirror shatter, one of the Hodnets killed Clon with a sword. After these events, Margaret descended into insanity. She was said to have sought out mirrors constantly to check if her beauty had returned. Apparently there is one stone on the castle's wall which had been rubbed smooth over the years, said to be the spot where her favourite mirror used to hang. Because she never got her beauty back, she now haunts the castle after passing away, faceless, looking for mirrors around the castle. Many tourists and locals have seen the faceless woman in and around the castle walls. And finally, in at number 1 we have Charleville Castle. The Charleville Castle is a Gothic style castle and is located located in County Offaly. It was built by Thomas More in 1641, and the estate was passed through the hands of Charles More, Lord Tullamore, who was the grandson of Thomas, and when he died in 1674 it went to Jane, then to Charles William Berry. The original mansion was extended into the beautiful castle it is today. Commissioned in 1798, was designed by Francis Johnston, was built between 1800 and 1812. The most famous of the ghost scene is that of the little girl named Lady Harriet, who died after a fall off a staircase in the castle. Another ghost scene is Lady Harriet's uncle Henry Walter, who died at the age of 7 from influenza. Although he died in London, his body was brought to Ireland and he was buried in the family vault. The volunteers describe Henry and Harriet as terrible twins, as these spirits seem to be very mischievous, and there is even a famous picture taken in the castle that shows a shadowy little boy. The library that is located in the castle is said to be a hotspot for paranormal activity. People who have visited the library have witnessed a dark shadowy form of an older person on the grounds coming from the door, so the children aren't the only ghosts located in the castle. The Balgal Castle has been claimed to be the most haunted building and grounds in all of Europe. It appeared on many TV shows like Most Haunted, Scariest Places on Earth, and Ghost Hunter International. It was also the location for many movies like Becoming Jane, Northanger Abbey, and The Green Knight. It's a huge haunted attraction and has been visited by many different psychics and paranormal investigators.
Kicking off the list at number 5, the Landmark Inn. Located in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right around Lake Superior, you'll find the Landmark Inn. Yeah, nice and cute and cozy. Come on in, take your coat off, stay a while. This fancy hotel was originally built in 1930 as a luxury accommodation for wealthy business owners from all around the United States. Sounds like a good time. Let's gather, let's talk shop around candles. These business owners would visit the Landmark to check on their business interests, all that good stuff. Though for its 100 years being open to guests, the hotel has had multiple reports of, you guessed it, ghosts and paranormal activity. It's so common at the Landmark Inn that the ghost hunters and paranormal investigators, they make trips out to the hotel quite often just to check in and be like, hey, how's it going? And they put on their gadgets and they just check in on them. They can rely on them. The hotel's 6th floor is home to one of the saddest stories the hotel has ever seen. This story takes place in the 1930s when the hotel was a new, lively social and cultural center in town. The story revolves around a ship worker who fell in love with a local librarian and conducted their love affair in the Lilac Room. Yeah, of all places, of course, let's go meet the Lilac Room. Sounds beautiful. And that was where the man was staying. Perfect place to meet. The couple was said to have a planned wedding upon his return from the last voyage on the sometimes treacherous Lake Superior. Unfortunately, their love affair ended in tragedy when his ship met with a storm and sank to the bottom of a lake. He never returned to the shore, and the librarian mourned the man in said Lilac Room, eventually dying herself of a broken heart. The heartbreaking story comes with many reports of the Lilac Room now being haunted. Yeah, rightfully so, as a large number of guests has reported hearing cries and whispers from a female. The female is also seen by many guests and workers on the 6th floor near the Lilac Room, crying and mourning for her loved one. A less romantic story that is associated with the hotel goes back to when it was even finished being built. During construction, a man ended the life of his girlfriend due to anger and jealousy, and this took place right after she told him about her past boyfriends and their relationship history, just normal stuff that he flipped out on, just a monster. And since the hotel was still being built, to conceal the evidence, the man buried her in the unfinished basement. Just horrible stuff. You knew I was going there and you're like, please don't. To this day, decades later, visitors and employees report hearing cries from that basement, and some report hearing whispers from a female voice asking for them to find her body. I just got goosebumps. That's real goosebumps. No matter how much time goes by, these two women, heartbroken for different reasons, still haunt said hotel today. Number 4, Michigan Bell Telephone Building. The Bell Telephone Building can be found in downtown Grand Rapids. It's known from the legend that the building is haunted by 2 ghosts. It's always 2, eh? Always gotta have pairs. Good things come in pairs. Even demons. These spirits have consistently caused chaos throughout the buildings for years in their own unique personal way. We love it. We love a unique ghost. The spirits that haunt the Bell Building are rumored to be Warren and Virginia Randall, a couple who used to reside in the Grand Rapids. Back in 1907, they moved from Detroit and bought the Judd White Mansion in Grand Rapids, which has now been torn down and built into what we now know as the Bell Telephone Building. So a lot of history there already. Over the years of living in this new house, Warren and Virginia's relationship started to crumble as Warren became very strange and paranoid almost, creating hardships in their relationship. In 1908, Virginia became tired of Warren's strange and aggressive behavior, so she decided, I'm out of here, peace. She left him. One night, 3 years after they were separated, Warren convinced Virginia into taking a car ride with them, hoping to get back together, maybe talk it out. The two of them ended up at the Judd White House, where their verbal disagreement turned horrible, and Warren sadly took the life of Virginia. Then he proceeded to end his own life in the very same moment. The tragic accident that happened in the Judd White House became public knowledge, and the house was left empty with no one wanting to occupy it. Yeah, more than fair. I'm like, what's rent? Also, what happened? No. The house remained abandoned for 10 years after the accident, accident until they finally just decided to tear the thing down completely. Thus in 1924 they built the Bell Telephone Building on the ground, which still is in operation today. Yeah, they didn't tear that one down, that one's still going strong. Due to the horrifying scenes that happened on the grounds of the Bell Building, many claim that the spirits of Randall and Virginia still remain, haunting the new building. Some say that ghosts move into the new building and remain there to this day. I mean, I think that's possible. Ghosts like to move, they can go through walls, they can probably relocate. Through the years of operation in the office building, visitors and employees all report being harassed by strange late night calls, which have been traced back to be coming from inside of the building itself. Yeah, inside the house, you guessed it, it's upstairs, that's so scary. Due to this and the strange eerie feelings that the employees feel while they're even working, it's safe to say Randall and Virginia may remain on the grounds, most likely. They're definitely there. It sounds like they're for sure there. Number 3, the Henderson Castle. Established in 1895, this castle is a hub for many spirits and paranormal activity. I mean, it's a castle. The original owners, Frank and Mary Henderson, are said to haunt the castle as they passed away back in 1899. Yeah, I wouldn't want to leave either, living or dead. Additionally, other spirits are said to reside in the castle, a young girl and a dog. Yeah, a dog! We've got a dog ghost. How do you deal with that? Ghost barks? That'd be so scary. In 2005, the castle was occupied by Peter Livingstone McNellis and his family. When the family resided in the castle, Livingstone's son, Vincent, before anyone else had ever reported anything strange happening in the house, he said that he saw an apparition of a figure in the Victorian room, originally the changing room for one Mary Henderson. The son said while pointing at a picture of a woman dressed in an old period clothing, some Victorian clothing, that was the woman he saw wearing that same clothing. I would throw up. If someone ever said that, I'd be like, oh, this Victorian painting? And one former innkeeper who stayed at the castle each night told Livingstone on numerous occasions that she also felt a presence coming up and down the staircase, a movement passing her on the stairs when she would walk by. Ugh, these are scary. Top 5 is like, or top 10 is scary fish. This is hard. This is some scary stuff. 9 a.m. I'm already getting spooked. While now the castle is being used for a bed and breakfast, guests have fallen victim to ghosts as well. Yeah, it's not over yet. The Henderson Castle is a very paranormal active ground that many ghost hunters have investigated, and they've confirmed, in fact, that it's haunted by spirits. I trust them. The people that can go into these castles and physically do this, I'm like, yep, I trust your opinion, whatever. He just comes out, he's like, haunted. We're like, thanks, Daryl. This has been confirmed as these ghosts have interacted with many paranormal investigator teams, in addition to guests and employees of the castle. Yeah, they're just harassing everyone. The ghosts seem to be friendly, not evil whatsoever, so that's a good side, I guess, to being haunted by ghosts. They have been known to speak and physically touch guests and employees. Just they touch them on their back, side, shoulder, always in the back. You never see it coming. It's always in this region. Not only that, but there's also been reports of radios making weird noises or turning on by themselves, even though they're either unplugged or just either turned off. Both bad, both scary. Guests and employees have also reported hearing footsteps upstairs, slamming doors from unexplainable sources, and some ghosts have been wearing the clothes that they wore while they were alive. Clothes that they wore while they died in, probably. As the spirit of Mary Henderson has been reported as many guests at the top of the staircase, wearing her usual getup. Imagine being like a clown, like a jester, and then you die in that, and that's what you look like as a ghost. You're like, what? I was doing a mascot gig. I don't want to look like a shark forever. Number 2, Allegan Lodge. The old Allegan Elk Lodge was built in 1909. It was used as a psychiatric and TB hospital until its closure in 1948. The lodge was a former hospital that was frequented by mobster Al Capone, and one that many say is haunted by at least 7 different ghosts. Yeah, you thought 2 was bad. Add 5 more. Now we got 7 ghosts. And it's currently on the auction block in Allegan. If you have a lot of money and bravery, there you go. While the structure was originally built by physician John Robinson in 1909, somewhere in the 1920s, it was sold to a doctor from the Chicago area who had allegedly had underworld ties. That's a great doctor. That's just who you want working on your pancreas. Brought pancreas back today. The facility was supposedly frequented by mafia figures such as Al Capone, the Prohibition-era Chicago mob boss, and his men. Yeah, when they needed medical attention or when they simply needed to get away from Chicago, this is where they'd go. The old Elks Lodge, Al Capone. He's like, oh, it's cozy. They have great soup. Years later, it was used as an Eagles Lodge and an Elks Lodge. And in 2010, it was acquired by an Allegan woman who began renovating the property, but now she wants to sell it. Yeah, can't imagine why. Because one of the former doctors who owns the lodge had underworld ties, maybe? Something like that? I don't know. It led to a lot of people believing that there's a lot of undercover stuff about this lodge. It's still happening to this day. I don't know why I'm doing this like it's like over there, but I'm like, there's something going on in that lodge. Especially as it's known to hold 7 different paranormal entities, like I mentioned previously. For many years, employees and visitors have told stories of spirits who relentlessly roam the building. Some of the paranormal activity that has been experienced here includes cabinets opening up by themselves in the kitchen, sounds of children laughing, it's always calming in the morning, photographic anomalies captured throughout the building, and like you name it, shadowy figures in the basement, all bad. Notably where the morgue was located, the basement, good stuff, a lot of stuff happening in there. They'd be knocking on the front door, indiscernible conversations, and ringing at the doorbell when no one was present. Yeah, good stuff. Again, I have goosebumps, they're back. Guests also heard footsteps and the sound of hospital activity long after being used as one. They'd also see full-bodied apparitions of children. They would just see ghost children. That would be it. I wouldn't have to see any more. I would just see the ghost children and be like, again, see ya. Like that's. And finally, number 1, 0.0 Barks Lighthouse. There are plenty of lighthouses in Michigan, and plenty of them are rumored to be haunted, of course, because they're lighthouses and they're creepy, as they normally are. And this one is no exception. Built in 1847, real old, lot of history with this one. The lighthouse is located on 0.0 Barks. As the legend goes, early to mid 1800s, Peter Shook had been 0.0 Barks' first lighthouse keeper. He was the OG. In 1849, Peter drowned while he and a couple of friends were sailing to Port Huron to pick up supplies for the lighthouse. He left behind 8 kids and his wife Catherine, and she took over at that point for Peter's duties, thus becoming Michigan's first female lighthouse keeper. Since then, people have claimed to see the spirit of Catherine walking along the edge of a cliff dressed in mourning clothes, as she is still heartbroken by the loss of her lover, of course. As we talked about earlier, ghosts like to wear the things that they were, that they passed away in. Again, I would hate to be a clown outfit, that would suck. She had also been spotted in the window of the 2nd floor wearing an apron, along with an apparition being seen, footsteps ascending and descending the tower stairs, and giggling has also been heard. Yeah, you hear giggling and there's cold spots, therefore haunted, for sure haunted. And the smell of burnt tobacco has also been wafting through the air many a times. Lighthouses are pretty stressful, more than fair. When paranormal investigators, specifically the Southeast Michigan Paranormal Society team, when they had a 2-day intensive investigation after their search, they concluded that they believe that there is every reason for the lighthouse to be haunted. The investigators did some electric voice phenomenon work in the living room, and then they heard loud thuds from overheard. Like, where did they get this gear from, Like, I want this gear. I have some questions of myself going on in the apartment. I want to swing it around a bit. A sound of something scraping along the floor as well, and additionally, during their investigation, the rocking chair had moved 2 feet and was still moving. Just love to keep rocking around. We love that. We love haunted rocking chairs. We love unexplainable forces. While they were upstairs, they also reported hearing heavy footsteps from another unknown source. So many ghosts, there's rocking chairs, people moving around, working in the basement. It doesn't sound like the afterlife is a peaceful one, if I'm being honest. Sounds like there's a lot of to do after you die. I'm not really looking forward to it. I thought I could just kind of float around in your paintings, but now it sounds like I'm gonna have to go and wear this. Wear my morning clothes, who knows?
Number 5 on this list is the Plaza Theater Performing Arts Center. Built in 1930, this beautiful theater has had many shows and screenings here over the years. For 55 years, it was in operation as one of the premier spots to have your movie shown, but in 1985, the theater shut down. It remained as such for about 20 years when in 2006, it began to get renovated. Now it's mainly just for live theater and other performance art in the city of El Paso. Like a lot of beautiful old theaters though, as time passes, legends emerge, and this one in particular certainly has its fair share. The Plaza Theater for Performance Arts Center has 3 primary ghostly apparitions it houses. The first is our very standard and very classic drifting woman in white. Looking sad and down on her luck, the spirit of this woman will often drift around through the rafters and has been seen by many workers throughout the years. The second is a man in all black who materializes in front of people. He's described a bit like a shadow creature, but slightly less menacing. I suppose if we have our woman in white, it's only fitting that we have a man in black to get a little bit of variety going. The third ghost sticks with the theme of spicing things up and is actually a little boy with a bouncing ball. It's not a basketball, but a small bouncy ball that the child seemingly plays with as he haunts the theater. Nobody knows the origin of these ghosts or how they got here at all. Are they connected? Maybe once a family unit who died here together, or are they all separate and have each suffered strange tragedies at this location over the century? El Paso, I'm sure, has some other theaters, and I'd stick to those ones if you're looking to watch some live shows if you're there. Number 4 on this list is Henley Row. Located on the Texan island of Galveston on the Gulf Coast, this is the most famous haunted spot for locals in the region. Texas Highways writes, "It's not surprising that Henley Row is a hotspot for supernatural activity. Completed between 1855 and 1858 for shippers and cotton brokers, it was the town's tallest structure during the Civil War. The roof doubled as a Confederate lookout for Union ships. Galveston and nearby Barrier Islands, history had been laced with tragedy. It was the site of a bloody Civil War fight, and serial epidemics of yellow fever decimated the populace. Hurricanes blast through regularly. The 1990 storm left up to 12,000 casualties in the worst natural disaster in US history. No wonder Texas writer Brian Woolley called Galveston an old cemetery with a beach attached. The resident ghosts of Henley Row represent aspects of Galveston history. There's the Confederate soldier seen on the roof and around the building. The bloodied teenage factory worker is a vestige of the building's cotton grading days. The lady in white and the running and playing little boy and little girl are thought to be 1900 storm victims. The upper floors house apartments and offices now, but Henley Market's glass ceiling reveals views of stairs and landings. During renovations, workers reported tools mysteriously moving around. Staff recall other spooky experiences as well. Some years ago, a friend gave her old photo of Dr. Wilbur from a house on Church Street that's always displayed in the shop. When Hurricane Ike inundated the building with 10 feet of water in 2008, the photo went undamaged while many other things were destroyed. Every year on November 1st, employees construct an elaborate Day of the Dead altar that includes the photo and lighted candles. Before closing, the staff follows a 3-person backup routine to ensure the candles are completely extinguished, even dousing them with water. Yet almost every single year, 1 or more candles are burning the next morning. I can't imagine working at a place where we had to light candles for our ghost altar. Like, that action alone would make me want to quit immediately. I suppose the one good thing is that the ghosts here don't appear to be particularly evil or wanting to inflict harm. Still though, waking up and heading to work is already a tall task as it is, but knowing that there's a dead little boy and girl waiting there, yeah, that's a solid no-go for me. Number 3 on this list is the USS Lexington. The ship has its own museum dedicated to it now, and it is 100% haunted. The decommissioned World War II aircraft carrier is riddled with different phantoms. This museum is literally said to receive, on average, hundreds of reports of ghostly apparitions in 1 year. That is so much supernatural energy that is just congregated here. Now, World War II was obviously an awful time, and if this boat played a major role in the Battle of the Atlantic, which I imagine it did, then it assuredly saw its fair share of tragedies. The ghosts are not quiet about their presence, they make themselves very known. One of the most famous ones resides in the engine room. Apparently, visitors will go there and a spirit will form explaining the engines and how they work. Then, when his lecture is over, poof, he will be gone in a puff of smoke. There's also a general sailor that walks around the ship and is actually said to be rather helpful. However, with these tame ghosts, there are some troublemakers as well. Small items that you may have on your person, a wallet, a watch, a phone, a keychain, anything like that are often reported missing after people get on the ship. If you do intend to go here, then hold on to your valuables very closely and get ready for a long lecture on engines. Number 2 on this list is Bragg Road. For over 100 years now, this road has been haunted by a very strange and ghostly light. It's been seen by hundreds of people during that time, and nobody can explain it. Texas Highways says, in the heart of the Big Thicket is Hardin County, and in the heart of Hardin County is the infamous Bragg Road, home to countless sightings of the ghost road light that appears to nighttime travelers on the road between Saratoga and the defunct village of Bragg Station. Before the current road was built, the Arrow Strait clearing served as Santa Fe Railroad's branch line built in 1903. From its inception, locals considered the line haunted by Mexican laborers murdered by a thieving foreman, a deserter shot by Confederate soldiers, a hunter lost forever in the woods, and a decapitated railroad brakeman searching for his head. But all the stories share a common theme, a floating orb of light. The road replaced the railroad tracks in 1934, but the light remained, seen by hundreds of people over the decades. In the 1960s, Archer Fullingham, editor of the County News, spread its notoriety in articles. National Geographic published a clear photo of the light in a 1974 feature about the Big Thicket. Texas folklorist Francis Albanese Menifee documented sighting stories from the old-timers and young folks alike. In 1997, Hardin County designated Bragg Road as Ghost Road Scenic Drive Park. A pretty road through the woods in the daytime turns into a spooky spot for supernatural sightings by night. Word is the most auspicious times to see the light are on moonless autumn nights. What the heck is this light that has been haunting this place for all these years? Even National Geographic, a very highly reputable column, has posted stories on it with actual photos including it. If it's a manifestation of some of these ghosts, then which ghost is causing it, and maybe more importantly, is it dangerous? If you want to find out, then you need to head to Bragg Road and look for yourself, but I wouldn't recommend it, honestly. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Yorktown Memorial Hospital. This hospital is definitely up there as one of the most haunted spots in Texas, and could even make a play for the most haunted spots in America. It was built in the 1950s and managed by the Roman Catholic Church for a few decades before eventually closing down in 1986. Then for 8 more years until 1992, it was a drug rehab facility, but finally in 1992 it closed for good. Since then it's been abandoned and gained some very serious ghostly legends by the locals. One of the most famous demonic creatures that resides here is this black specter with bright glowing red eyes. It's not shy either and will attack you if you're here alone or in a vulnerable state. This is the most famous of the presences here, but it isn't alone. The ghost of a man who appears to have a bullet wound directly in his forehead is also said to live here. His ghost is a lot less forceful than the dark demon though, and is said to just show himself to visitors rather than attack them. The spirits of nuns are said to be on the 2nd floor though as well. These spirits are similar to our demon creature and will claw and scratch at people who decide to come here. Along with all of this, we also get our classic indicators of a haunted location, such as feelings of despair as you walk through, temperature changes, and moans echoing throughout the building. Avoid this place at all costs if you want to keep a tight grip of your sanity.